Welcome, dear friends. Today's podcast continues the introduction of a new series based on the spiritual classic, Divine Intimacy, Meditations on the Interior Life for Every Day of the Liturgical Year by Father Gabriel of St. Mary Magdalen, O.C.D. Throughout this series, we will explore profound reflections on the interior life, guided by the wisdom of Carmelite spirituality. Inspired by the teachings of Saints Teresa of Jesus, John of the Cross, and other great mystics, divine intimacy leads us toward deeper prayer, greater virtue, and union with God. Now let us begin our journey into Father Gabriel's profound spiritual insights.
Welcome back to our deep dive into divine intimacy. I'm so ready to continue exploring the richness of this book with you.
Me too. So in part one, we set the stage, talked about the Carmelite tradition, Father Gabriel's approach, how the book is laid out. Now I kind of want to dive into some of the specific themes that you'll encounter as you journey through the liturgical year. What really jumps out at you when we think about Advent and Christmas? You know, what I find so compelling about Father Gabriel's reflections during Advent is how he kind of nudges us to think about Christ's coming, not just as something that happened like way back when, but as a living reality in our lives right now.
Okay.
He invites us to take like a good look at our own hearts and see if there's anything blocking us from like fully welcoming Christ's presence.
So it's about more than just putting up a tree and hanging stockings.
Exactly. It's about preparing that inner dwelling place, our soul, right, for Christ to truly enter.
Mm-hmm.
He encourages us to cultivate this beautiful sense of expectancy, of longing for that deep union with God.
I love that. It almost makes you think about Advent differently, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then how does that shift into the actual Christmas season?
Well, during Christmas, the meditations, they beautifully illuminate the mystery of the Incarnation.
Okay.
Father Gabriel helps us to truly grasp the profound humility of God becoming human,
Yeah.
of divine love made manifest in a tiny baby. It's like an invitation for us to cultivate that same humility and love in our own lives.
It makes you think about Christmas in a whole new light, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Moving beyond all the presents and decorations and getting to the heart of what it's really about. But then the liturgical year takes us to Lent, which is a time of, reflection and for many penitents.
Right.
How does divine intimacy guide us through this season?
Father Gabriel doesn't shy away from the more challenging aspects of Lent.
Okay.
He invites us to really confront our weaknesses, to acknowledge that we need God's grace in our lives. But he does this with incredible compassion and sensitivity.
So it's not about like wallowing in guilt or anything like that.
Not at all. It's more about recognizing that we all need purification and transformation.
Okay.
Lent is a time, he reminds us, to die to self so that we can rise with Christ. That imagery is so powerful, isn't it?
It really is. But how does that translate into our everyday lives? I mean, what are some ways we can actually live out that dying to self?
Well, he encourages us to embrace practices like fasting, prayer, and almsgiving. But he invites us to see these practices not as like burdens, but as ways to loosen the grip of worldly things and lean more on God.
Yeah.
He also guides us to reflect on Christ's passion, to really contemplate his suffering and sacrifice, and to draw strength from his example.
It sounds like a really profound way to connect with Lent, to make it more than just giving something up.
Exactly. And then, of course, we have Easter, which is all about joy and hope, right? So how does divine intimacy help us experience the wonder of this season?
It's interesting, sometimes Easter can feel like a one-day celebration.
Yeah.
And then we move on.
Yeah.
But divine intimacy seems to invite us to like carry that spirit with us.
That's such a great point. The Easter meditations, they really are full of that sense of triumph and hope. Father Gabriel helps us understand the incredible victory of Christ over sin and death and how we share in that victory through him. He calls us to live as Easter people. Think about that for a moment. What does it mean to walk through life as someone who has been truly touched by the resurrection?
Wow. Yeah, it's not just celebrating what happened 2,000 years ago, but letting that event transform us today in this very moment.
Precisely. And then we move into Pentecost, which is all about the Holy Spirit. What insights does Father Gabriel offer about this often, I think, overlooked season?
I have to admit, Pentecost has always felt a bit mysterious to me.
Yeah.
I understand the basic story, but what does it mean for us, like, today?
I think a lot of people feel that way. The Pentecost meditations and divine intimacy are all about opening ourselves to the transformative power of the Holy Spirit in our lives.
Okay.
Father Gabriel walks us through those various gifts of the Spirit: wisdom, understanding, counsel, fortitude, knowledge, piety, and fear of the Lord. He helps us to recognize how those gifts might already be at work in our own lives without us even realizing it.
So it's about becoming more aware of how the Holy Spirit is moving within us.
Exactly. He also encourages us to actually pray for a greater outpouring of the Spirit,
Okay.
to allow the Spirit to really guide our thoughts, our words, our actions.
So it's like an invitation to surrender to the Holy Spirit, to let him lead the way.
Yes, exactly. But then, as you mentioned earlier, we have ordinary time, which takes up the majority of the liturgical year.
Right.
So how does divine intimacy make those seemingly ordinary weeks come alive?
Yeah, that's always been the challenge for me. How do we find that spark, that sense of the sacred during those weeks when it feels like, life is just, ordinary?
That's one of the most remarkable things about divine intimacy, in my opinion.
Okay.
Father Gabriel doesn't let ordinary time just fade into the background. He shows us how to find the extraordinary within the ordinary.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How does he do that?
He does it by turning our attention to the lives of the saints, especially Mary.
Okay.
He also focuses on the sacraments and how we can receive grace through them. And he reminds us that we're all called to live out the Beatitudes, not just on Sundays, but in our everyday lives.
So he's showing us that holiness isn't just for special occasions, but for every single moment of our lives.
Exactly. It's about finding God in the mundane, in those everyday tasks and interactions, doing the dishes, going to work, even waiting in line at the grocery store.
Yeah.
These can all become opportunities for prayer and service.
That's a powerful thought, isn't it? To see our whole lives as a form of prayer, no matter what we're doing.
It is.
But, we talked a bit about mental prayer in part 1. How does Father Gabriel approach this topic in divine intimacy? I know it's central to Carmelite spirituality.
You're right. Mental prayer is kind of woven throughout the meditations. He doesn't give like a step-by-step guide or anything, but he's constantly encouraging us to cultivate that spirit of recollection, to make time for silence and communion with God.
So it's about creating space, even in our busy lives, to just be present with God, to listen to his voice.
Exactly. It's not about emptying your mind or trying to reach some like mystical state.
Right.
It's simply about fostering a loving relationship with God through attentive listening and heartfelt dialogue.
It sounds like a practice that requires a lot of patience and perseverance.
Yes.
But one that can be incredibly rewarding.
Absolutely. But remember, you're not alone on this journey.
Yeah.
Father Gabriel offers gentle encouragement and reminds us that even a few minutes of dedicated prayer can make a huge difference.
Now, I want to shift gears a bit and ask you about something that's always fascinated me. We've talked about all these beautiful themes that run throughout the liturgical year.
Right.
But what about the lasting impact of engaging with divine intimacy over time? I mean, what kind of transformation can we expect to see in ourselves as we work through these meditations day after day, year after year?
That's a profound question, and I think it's at the heart of what Father Gabriel wants to convey. I believe one of the most profound transformations is a deepening awareness of God's presence in every aspect of our lives.
Okay.
As we immerse ourselves in these meditations, we begin to see the world through a different lens. We start to recognize God's hand in everything, even the things that seem, small or insignificant.
So it's not just about learning more about God, but about experiencing a shift in our perception and our whole way of being in the world.
Exactly. We become more sensitive to the movements of the Holy Spirit within us and in the world around us.
And how does that sensitivity, that awareness, translate into like concrete changes in how we live our lives?
As our relationship with God grows deeper, our desire to please him also grows.
Okay.
And so it becomes more natural to choose good over evil, to act out of love rather than selfishness.
Yeah.
We become more patient, more compassionate, more forgiving.
It sounds like a beautiful process of sanctification, of becoming more like Christ.
Yes.
But what about the challenges we face along the way? We all stumble and fall. We get distracted. We get discouraged. How does Father Gabriel address those inevitable struggles in our spiritual lives?
That's such an important point, and Father Gabriel doesn't shy away from it.
Okay.
He acknowledges that the spiritual life is full of ups and downs. There will be times of dryness, distraction, and even temptation.
Yeah.
It's like a constant battle against the forces of evil, both within ourselves and in the world around us.
So he's not presenting a rose-colored view of spirituality.
No.
He's being honest about the difficulties.
Absolutely. He reminds us that we're engaged in spiritual warfare,
Okay.
but he also equips us with the tools we need to fight those battles. He emphasizes the importance of a strong foundation in prayer, relying on the sacraments, seeking guidance from wise spiritual mentors, and surrounding ourselves with a supportive community of faith.
So it's not about going it alone, but about drawing strength from the resources the church provides.
Exactly. And he also stresses the importance of humility.
Okay.
Recognizing that we are completely dependent on God's grace for every step we take on this journey.
Yeah.
We need to remember that it's okay to stumble and fall as long as we keep getting back up and turning to God for mercy and forgiveness.
That's a message of hope and encouragement, especially for anyone feeling lost or defeated on their spiritual path. But before we wrap up part 2 of our deep dive into divine intimacy, I want to take a moment to speak directly to you, the listener.
Yes. They are at the heart of this journey.
You're absolutely right. So to all of you listening, I encourage you to approach divine intimacy with an open heart and mind. Don't be afraid to dive into these meditations, even if they challenge you. Allow yourself to be transformed by them. And most importantly, remember that you're not alone on this journey. God is with you every step of the way, offering you his grace, love, and guidance. We'll be back soon with part 3 of our deep dive, where we'll explore even more of the treasures hidden within this extraordinary book. Until then, may God bless you and draw you ever closer to his heart.
Thank you for spending this time with us today, reflecting on the wisdom of the Carmelite Saints. For more Carmelite resources, visit the General Curia of the Teresian Carmel at discalcedcarmelite.com. Until next time, may God bless us and keep us close to his heart. Take care and see you soon.